The seventh drop of sunstone liquor hung, a perfect sphere of captured dawn, from the tip of the glass pipette. Elias Thorne held his breath, his knuckles white around the delicate instrument. Below, the cauldron's contents swirled, a slow vortex of crushed moon petal and silver dust, its color the deep violet of a twilight sky. He watched the drops stretch, tremble, and release. It struck the surface with a silent ripple, sending a single phosphorescent pulse through the mixture before vanishing into the hole. A quiet satisfaction settled in his chest, the familiar comfort of a process followed, a step completed. This was his sanctuary, the meticulous language of alchemy, a world of predictable reactions and measurable results. It was the only place he felt competent, the only space where the persistent hum of unease in his own skin would fade to a whisper. The potion, his secret work, was meant to silence that whisper for good. Essence of alignment, the old text called it, a tonic to harmonize the inner self with the outer form, to grant a person the confidence that comes from true congruence. For Elias, it was a desperate hope held in a simmering pot. He set the pipette in its rack and ran a hand through his dark hair, the motion automatic, the result unsatisfying. His fingers caught in the short strands. He often found himself staring at the village women, at Lyra Meadowsweet in her herb stall, not with desire, but with a strange, aching envy for the effortless way they inhabited their bodies. They moved with a grace he could never muster, a sense of belonging in their own forms that felt as distant to him as the constellations named in his master's charts. He caught his reflection in the polished curve of a copper still. The face that looked back was a stranger's mask, all sharp angles and severe lines, a strong jaw, shoulders too broad for the narrow confines of the laboratory shelves. It was the face of a young man, undeniably his, yet it felt like a borrowed garment, poorly fitted and coarse against his soul. He looked away, the familiar coldness spreading through him. He was just shy. That's what his master had always said, a gentle dismissal. He was a creature of books and beakers, unsuited for the wider world. Elias clung to that explanation, but deep down he knew it was a lie. This was something deeper, a fundamental dissonance he lacked the words to describe. The master's absence, now in its third month, was both a blessing and a weight. The tower was his alone, a quiet haven for this obsessive, personal project. No prying questions, no knowing looks. Yet the silence was vast, a constant reminder of his solitude. A letter had arrived last week, its parchment smelling of sea salt and foreign spices. It was full of talk about crystalline structures in northern geodes, with no mention of a return date. Elias was truly on his own. He returned to the central workbench, his gaze falling upon the leather-bound tome propped open on a stand. The script was archaic, the diagrams complex. He had spent a year translating the single page that described this potion. "The shell must match the spirit," one line read, "for the soul to find its voice." That phrase had lodged itself in his mind. His soul, he felt, was voiceless, a muffled thing trapped behind a wall of someone else's flesh. The final ingredient was starlight, captured and distilled into a single, volatile powder. It required a delicate hand and absolute precision. The text warned of instability, of unpredictable outcomes if the ratios were even a fraction askew. Elias felt a tremor of fear, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, driving need. This discomfort, this feeling of being a ghost in his own life, was a greater terror than any alchemical failure. He had to try. He had to know what it felt like to be whole, to look in a mirror and see not a stranger, but himself. As night deepened outside, casting long shadows that danced like specters in the lamplight, he prepared the final measures. The air in the lab grew thick with anticipation, heavy with the scent of herbs and heated metal, and something else, something electric. He picked up the small, porcelain bowl of starlight powder. It shimmered with a light of its own, a tiny galaxy in his hands. This was the moment, the final step to becoming the person he was supposed to be. The final drop of moondew trembled on the tip of the glass pipette. Below, the cauldron's contents churned. A vortex of liquid twilight shot through with silver sparks. Elias held his breath, the air in the high laboratory thick with the scent of boiled herbs and anticipation. For weeks, every waking moment funneled into this single point. The potion of true form, his master's most ambitious, unfinished work, his own obsession. His hand was steady as he depressed the bulb. The single bead of liquid fell, striking the swirling surface without a sound. For a heartbeat, the violet mixture clarified, becoming as clear as pure water. Success felt like a warm current flowing through his chest. He reached for the final component, a pinch of powdered sunstone meant to stabilize the matrix. The candlelight flickered, casting a dancing shadow across the grimoire's page. A smudge of ink, a trick of the light, a single, critical rune misread. He sprinkled the golden dust into the cauldron. The silence that followed was absolute, a void that pulled all sound from the room. The clear liquid did not shimmer, it solidified. A low hum began, a vibration that resonated not in his ears, but in his bones. A hairline crack appeared on the cauldron's copper side, then another. Brilliant, bone-white light erupted from within, a flash that seared his vision and erased the world. The stone floor bucked, throwing him from his feet. A wave of force, hot and smelling of ozone and blooming nightshade, tossed him against a bookshelf. The impact was a dull thunderclap against his skull, and then there was only darkness. Consciousness returned in fragments, like shards of broken glass. The first sense was smell, charred wood, shattered botanicals, and a strange, sweet perfume he could not place. A groan escaped his lips, but the sound was wrong, higher, softer. He tried to push himself up from the cold flagstones, but his arms felt foreign, slender and lacking their familiar strength. He managed to roll onto his side. The room spun. When his vision cleared, he saw the laboratory. Ruin. The great cauldron was a mangled husk of blackened copper, split open like a seed pod. Glassware lay in glittering dust across the floor. Books had tumbled from their shelves, their pages splayed and singed. This was no simple failure. This was a cataclysm. A new sensation pricked his awareness. A weight against his shoulders and back, a silken tide that shifted when he moved. He reached a hand to his head, expecting his usual short-cropped hair. His fingers met a long, flowing mass, soft and unfamiliar. He pulled a strand before his eyes. It was the same sable brown, but it fell past his shoulder. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced the fog in his mind. He looked at his hand. It was smaller, the fingers more delicate, the knuckles less pronounced. This was not his hand. He scrambled into a sitting position, his balance skewed. The worn leather tunic he always wore felt tight across his chest in a way it never had. He touched the area, his fingers brushing against a soft, pronounced curve. A gasp, ragged and terrified, tore from his throat. The voice was a stranger's. Frantic, he explored the new contours of his body. The narrow waist, the gentle flare of hips, the smooth, unfamiliar skin of his face. His jaw lacked its familiar angularity. His throat felt delicate. Every point of contact, every discovery was a fresh wave of horror. This was not a glamour, not an illusion. The change felt bone deep, a fundamental rewriting of his entire being. He was still Elias inside his own head, but the shell, the very architecture of his body, was someone else, a woman. He staggered to his feet, a wave of vertigo washing over him. He stood in the wreckage of his life's work, in the ruins of his own body. The silence of the tower pressed in, amplified by the master's continued absence. There was no one to consult, no one to cry for help to, no one to reverse this impossible disaster. He was alone, utterly, terrifyingly alone in a stranger's form.
If you loved this video, give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you want to see next, and smash the hype button to help my channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next video. You can jump to it right here.